Gentlemen, welcome to trunblock.com. I want to start this interview by asking you how you actually managed to create a USP for PI retail with ShelfTrak, and this exclusively for the travel retail industry with no apparent competition. Steve?
Well, we've been working on ShelfTrak now for about 6 months, and it focuses currently on the alcohol and confectionery categories. And the whole way in which ShelfTrak came about was that we were approached by several brands who were wanting to basically understand more about the retail environment. They wanted to understand aspects such as product locations, they wanted to understand space, they wanted to understand how their products and competitor products were merchandised. And when we were looking into these kind of projects, what we realised was that the only way that we could really deliver all of the aspects that they were asking us to deliver was to create something entirely new. Nothing existed within the industry currently which allowed us to answer the questions that they had. And therefore ShelfTrak was born. And through ShelfTrak, what we're really trying to do is provide really a basis to provide informed decision making and to allow brands, allow retailers to have greater conversations about the direction of the industry, about how we can really create that better retail environment for the shopper ultimately.
So, Gary, why specifically did you focus ShelfTrak on the store environment?
Well, I think, as Steve said, we had a number of brands come to us with regards to looking for this kind of information. And what we had also sort of realised along this is in a post-pandemic environment and post-pandemic situation, retailers and brands have had to work really hard to re-establish their business. And that's what we've seen a lot of. And I think what we've seen in the focus on is that the brand space is looking really good. Brands are focusing on their own space, and I think we've started to see some pockets of really good execution again. However, what I think has been missed is a view of the total category. And I think we seem to have seen, I think we've taken our eye off the ball, or retailers and brands have taken their eye off the ball apart from their core space. And actually the rest of the category environment has started to become a little bit untidy. And what I mean by that is it's over-ranged, under-ranged, not executed as a shopper would want to shop it. So we really see this as a real focus on the retail fundamentals and being able to bring those to the desktop of the industry.
So what then do you see as ShelfTrak's central purpose?
I think that's a really good question, to be honest, and one which seems to be ever evolving. I mean, when we first set out with ShelfTrak, the real purpose of it, or what we saw as the core purpose, was to provide information, basically. Information on the space that a brand has and their competitor has, so that they can see how they're merchandised and that side of things. So really the eyes and ears. But what we're seeing now is that as ShelfTrak evolves, as the brands that are currently subscribe to ShelfTrak evolve in terms of their usage of the tool, we're seeing different usage or different use cases coming through. Some are using it in their sales negotiations. Some of them are using it to internally to speak to their sales staff to say, you know, we want more facings in this particular airport, let's benchmark it using ShelfTrak. We're seeing others just use it for the aspects such as perfect store and that side of things, which is where as a product and as a tool we're looking more and more to be moving.
So it's really multifaceted in that respect.
I couldn't describe it, or couldn't use a better phrase to describe it. Yes, we set out with what we thought was a single use or a main use of the tool, and we were, I think, quite surprised as it continued to progress just how multifaceted it really was.
Right now, you currently have retail experts going around some 40 stores across 25 major global airports, including Heathrow, JFK, Dubai and Beijing. And this is 3 times a year. But just how many airports do you expect to have on your roster by the end of 2024?
Well, that's absolutely right. So far it's 25 airports, 40 stores across those 25. So in some airports we'll do multiple stores, but in the majority it's the one store or the one main store. Now in wave 2, which we've just completed the fieldwork for, that went up to 33 airports. And now by mid-year 2024 we're looking at 50 airports, where we'll do around 75 stores across those. Now when it gets to 50 airports...
So you're spanning major hubs as well as major regional airports?
Yes, yeah. So it's all of the airports that you would expect to see within that 25, maybe barring 1 or 2, but then it goes down to some of those more regional locations within the 50. Will we go beyond 50? Maybe, maybe not. I think that within that 50, we feel that we have the coverage that's really necessary. Yeah.
So what volume of the business do you represent in real terms?
Approximately around 80% or 75-80% is what we estimate it at. So yes, we think that the coverage is probably there with 50. Will we go to 52? Maybe if there's a demand for it, but we feel that with 50 it's a really robust selection of locations.
I think if I could add to that, I think within those locations, because they is the majority of the business, we can actually take some major learnings from the data that we're collecting in those locations and apply it to others. So I think what we're able to understand from the information, the data we're collecting is applicable everywhere. But because we're collecting information at such a low level, we are able to aggregate that up to a total category, a total brand, and then be able to benchmark that across all of the locations that we are talking about.
You speak with substance.
Absolutely, it's robust. I'd like to say we say it's one source of truth. It's it's out there. It's public domain information, but it's the shopper interface that we all talk about.
We just collate the information. I think that's the thing, we collect and we collate. It's not everything there is for everyone to see, as it were.
But you interpret it too.
Yes, we do interpret it too, and it's basically providing a one source of information, whereas previously, and when I say previously, I mean even 4 months ago, 5 months ago, in order to see this kind of information, a brand manager would have to go to all of their individual locations. A brand would have to send a full team out to go and see how their products are merchandised. And what we're trying to do with this is go to all of the airports that are at the top of their list and provide all that information in one place and easily accessible as well.
It's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Gary, just moving on, I mean, you appear to be servicing brands with the data and metrics that you deliver that has really been hitherto impossible. What exactly do you deliver, though?
It's a good question, and I think in terms of what we're delivering is information that I'd like to think every brand and every retailer talk about every single day, which is how do shoppers interact with their products. Ultimately, I think everybody in the industry has one core aim, which is to get more travellers to become shoppers,
Exactly.
more shoppers to become buyers, and for buyers to purchase more items. That has to be the fundamentals of what we're talking about, and I think what we're doing with ShelfTrak is really the fundamental, is a real facilitator for bringing that to life. Essentially, what we're doing is we are quantifying digitally the store environment. If we think about current data in our industry, it's the one missing piece. So we have PAX data, we have nationality data, airline data, research data, and then of course there's EPOS data, albeit in limited aspects of being shared. However, the bit that is never quantified is what's happening in the store environment. So essentially what we're doing is through the technology that we use, through capturing store images, we're able to use computer vision and we're able to use deep machine learning to recognize every single product in the categories that we're working with. That then basically turns images into SKU level data at speed that we can then aggregate up to a total store, total category viewpoint, and then provide brands and retailers with the metrics that they probably should be talking about on a daily basis.
So, just how close you think this business is to actually having a broad EPOS availability?
I personally think we've never been as far away from having that product available as we are today. I think sort of probably post-pandemic has not helped things, and it's moved things a little bit backwards in terms of data sharing. However, I still think the blinkers are on when it comes down to information that people are willing to share and retailers are willing to share. And that's really one of the core drivers behind what we've created with ShelfTrak, is because we're able to bring SKU level data for 50 airports to the desktop and be able to offer benchmarking and good analysis of that data. We think that ShelfTrak is the next best thing to a Nielsen panel.
That's really quite some statement, and arguably it's the case. So how have the brands responded to ShelfTrak?
I think we've had a fabulous response, and I think it was born from brand requests. So a couple of brands who came to us and said, this is the kind of data that we're looking for. And then as we've built the product and built the tool and started to share it with brands from the middle of last year, the response has been better than we expected. And we've had all the major players in the two categories that we're dealing with, so confectionery and alcohol. We've spoken to all of them. Not all of them are on board yet, but in terms of the data we're capturing and how we're capturing it and what we're doing with it, they are starting to see that this is a brand new data source that adds huge amounts of value to their business. And it really is the sort of missing piece of the jigsaw when we think about all of the data that we have in the industry. It's the one bit that is now that we're able to quantify what's happening in store, it really allows other data sources to be put alongside it for some real sort of pivotal insights to be made.
So I guess the missing pieces in your business currently are perfume and cosmetics and tobacco. I mean, how close are you to those?
We would love to bring P&C and tobacco alongside confectionery and alcohol in terms of the ShelfTrak coverage. I think right now we picked alcohol and confectionery because those were the brands that were coming to us at that time. What we want to do is get that right, get the products out, get some waves under our belt, and then absolutely let's tackle P&C and tobacco if the hunger's there from the brands and the retailers.
Well, I can see it makes profound sense for the brands, but what about the retailers? I mean, we know how protective of their data some of them are. So how are you managing to gather data with or without their support? I mean, are you getting any pushback?
I mean, just one thing that's very, very different from any kind of EPOS tool or anything like that is that this is all publicly available information. So this is just what's going on in the store on a given day. In terms of the methodology behind it, we have our field team who go out and purposefully go out as shoppers. So they all enter the airport as a shopper, they go through the store as a shopper, and they collect the data as a shopper, so that we can really understand what that consumer interface is, rather than it being what the store's meant to look like, as it were. So everything is publicly available. It's not sensitive information. And I think the other thing is that when the brands are looking at the information that we're capturing, it has that added value for the fact that it is done via that mystery shopping or that traveller approach, because as I say, it is showing exactly what's happening in that store on that given day.
I think to add to that as well is this is not a tool to beat retailers up with by the brands. We want it to be a collaborative tool that retailers and brands use together. We've got one source of truth, which is the shopper interface, and ultimately it is about enhancing that using the data that we've got. The information and the insights that we believe we're providing to brands are empowering buyers, are empowering retailers to do better, to close gaps quicker, to make sure that they don't miss any opportunities, whether it's out of stocks, products that are out of position on shelf. We're able to quickly report on things that traditionally in an analog world would never be able to done.
I think what this service provides is a meaningful platform for collaboration and conversations between brands and retailers. I mean, it's really adding value to the business community and should improve and accelerate the business.
Absolutely, and that is just going back to what's the core purpose of ShelfTrak. It's multifaceted, but everything has that as the foundations effectively, in that what we're trying to create here is something that everybody can buy into, everyone can take hold of and really use as a collaborative tool to assist those conversations and really to allow the industry to move forward and to allow all of us to meet those shopper needs in a more effective manner.
Okay, I mean, I can see the value in the service, but is it really only affordable by the big boys?
So this is another thing that we were discussing in the very early stages of ShelfTrak, was this a tool that was just available for big brands with big budgets, or is it an industry tool? And we very, very strongly went down that we want it to be an industry tool. We want it to be available to everybody. So in terms of cost structures, we've done that so that it's everyone can play, as it were.
So you claim that brands can stay ahead of the curve. What do you mean?
What we mean by that, Peter, is quite simple really, is that we've digitally quantified the store environment. So people can see how much space they've got, what their prices are, where do they fit into the category, what position are they on shelf, in store, and as we've said, that's something that they can then benchmark for key airports across the world. Essentially, it's about having speed of reporting and making data available at pace so it can be actionable. So it's about actionable data that can be used both by retailers and brands, essentially at speed. So it's about the pace of being able to make change. And this is what's really changing the conversation, because historically, if you wanted to make changes in store or you recognise that planograms were not compliant, it could potentially take weeks to fix. Whereas with this, for brand ambassadors who are in store, they can send a photograph to us at ShelfTrak, and essentially within minutes they can have a digitized version of that image back with some data that says, actually you need to move this to here, or the price is wrong here. So it really is about sort of being able to make changes in retail at speed. Okay. There are some really exciting things coming down the line with this, and the technology that we're seeing is essentially, the technology that we've used by using machine learning and computer vision. Essentially, we've built a digital version of the stores already, and within our database, we have a high number of SKUs that are recognised by the computer. So as we put images in, it's able to convert that quickly into data. As we move forward, there are some really exciting developments with this. As I say, we think ShelfTrak is really about bringing category development into a digital age, and using tech to really help retailers and brands move forward and develop their business by closing gaps at speed. One example of this is that we can use our tech to focus on one fixture or one category, and we can get the system to look at a particular fixture, and if, for instance, that fixture runs out of stock or it runs low on stock, you can actually do things like send a message to somebody in store to say it needs replenishing, and things like that. And we're maybe a little bit away from that in this industry, but that's already happening in retail around the world, whereas tech is being used to make retail efficient.
All right, just taking all this on board, it seems to me that many brands may opt to use the retail consultancy of your business, and indeed so could retailers, to help them. Has this happened, and what do you actually bring to the party when they adopt your services?
Absolutely. I mean, the data is one part of this, and I think there are a number of brands who understand this data and can work with it themselves, but there are probably the majority of brands that we're dealing with are taking our additional services on board to allow us to convert that data into insight, to allow them to make changes at retail. To give you an example of that, there's a number of brands that we're working with where we've developed a retail scorecard for their business, and this involves basically us measuring their current execution against certain criteria, such as have they got the right SKUs in store, have they got the right amount of space, are their fixtures in the right place, are planograms compliant? So those sort of key measures. We're then scoring their current execution and saying, well, actually it's not right, you need to make these changes, and this would be your future execution, and these are all the things that you need to do that. So we're giving them advice on how to change space, how to change position, and giving them good commercial advice on how to make those changes. And then, because we're regularly going out and capturing the data, we're then able to remeasure it. So for the brands that we're working with on this, it's become a real commercial tool for them that they've used within their business, not just category marketing, or it's actually going through their entire business for sales, and they're making continuous improvement in store using our data.
I just want to go back to the AI issue. I mean, it's a very fast learning curve for just about anybody and everybody in this business right now. Are you satisfied by what you've incorporated at the moment will deliver what the market needs for the next 12 months, or will it evolve?
I think we see it as a continual evolvement. The AI is not new. It's it's sort of and computer vision is not new. It's been around for 10 years plus. However, the advancements that have been made in that technology over the last 2 to 3 years have allowed other companies and ourselves to be able to harness that for retail. And essentially, it's a case of educating a system to look at be the human eyes and do that. And at the moment, some of the, I'd say that the validation rates that we get out of our system are in the 90%. However, what we do is that every photograph that we look at is still humanly validated. So it's checked and it's got eyeballs on it as well as a computer. It's about speeding up the current process to be able to kind of deliver results quickly for clients.
So it's humanised AI in that respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think you coined a new phrase.
Okay. All right. One last question, guys. If there were 3 things that you wanted to say to the industry right now, here's your platform, what would they be?
I'd say firstly that the brands are doing a brilliant job. I think the retailers are doing a brilliant job, and as an industry we've come out of COVID and recovered in a phenomenal way. And I think that what we can do more of is looking at how others are doing things differently and learn from them, whether that be how a different brand is doing something, whether it's how a different retailer is doing something in a different location, and from that way make it a better experience for the shopper from an industry perspective.
Gary?
I think one of the areas that is a continual discussion is about data sharing. I think retailers can share data in a way that is not about letting the secrets out or not about giving sensitive commercial information away, but in a way that can be done, that can be the benefit of retailers and brands. And I think what I would say is retailers should be leaning into brands more. They've got some great expertise to be able to help them grow their business.
So, last point, Steve?
I think lastly, I'd just say come and talk to us. I think we have a wealth of information via ShelfTrak, via our research services, via our data consolidation services, and through that we can provide data and information for retailers and brands alike that can help them inform their decisions. I think the more data that we're looking at, whether that be consumer insights, whether it be ShelfTrak and what's going on in the store, it can only help us make better decisions, make more informed decisions, and ultimately do what we do best, and that's excite the shoppers in the store.
And do better business. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.